Hi everybody, Dr. Chip here, and today I'm going to be talking about fats. Well, lipids, fats and oils, and how important they are. Our brains are almost all fat. A living brain is like mayonnaise. I learned that in my neurosurgery rotation. Cell membranes are a high percentage of fat and cholesterol. If we don't have proper fats, if the oils that we eat and the fats that we eat are not the way they're supposed to be from nature, then we get inflammation. And almost all, if not all, disease is related to or caused by inflammation, including that cytokine storm from COVID. It's an overreaction or inflammatory response that occurs, usually not till 5 to 7 days after somebody comes down with COVID. So if we want to prevent inflammation, have a healthy brain, and have healthy cell membranes, we need fats, and we need to know what the right fats are and how to get them and how to get them in our body. Okay, so let's do a little history. Fats that we get today in the grocery store and that are pushed by the American Heart Association and by our government are mostly not healthy. They're not good for us. They're industry fats. And the industry pays the government. They fund the USDA. They fund the American Heart Association. The big industries fund the American Dental Association. And they push products with advertisements that are cheaper for them, that make them profit at our expense. But it didn't used to be like that. Before World War II, everybody used lard from a pastured grass-fed cow. And, from a pig, or tallow from a grass-fed cow. Butter from grass-fed cows, from the milk fat. Cream. They were just commonplace. It's what people used. And then industry got involved. One of the first things that industry did was, I don't know if you know it, but I don't know, 120 years ago or so, cotton was a major product exported from the United States. And the cotton gin was invented, and they made cottonseed oil from the cotton seeds once they could easily separate the cotton from the seeds. And what do you do with the seeds? The seeds were, unless you planted them, or waste product. So industry figures out, well, what are we going to do with the waste product to make money? And they did. Cottonseed oil. They made Crisco out of the cottonseed oil, which they advertised, and everybody started using instead of butter because they said it was better than butter, and people believed them, and it caused a lot of heart problems and other issues. Milk was another thing that happened early in the 20th century. Milk used to come from grass-fed cows. And it's interesting what happened in the book, The Story of Real Milk. Ronald Schnitt, he tells us that they were bringing in grain, barley, to make whiskey into the cities. People were flocking to the cities, immigrants especially, to get jobs. And so they were making whiskey. That's what people wanted. Yeah, I got a job, I got some money, hey, how about some whiskey? Only they had all this barley silage after they fermented it and got the sugars out and made the whiskey. There was all this stuff left over called silage. And they thought, well, what are we going to do with this? And they brainstormed and they said, well, I know what we'll do. We'll feed it to the cows. And they're like, how are we going to get it to the cows? Oh, well, we'll bring them in here, because if we feed them silage, they don't have to have all that grass. And so they fed them silage, and the cows got sick, and they got tuberculosis, and the people got tuberculosis from the bad milk. And it was never really blamed on the industry, but it was really their fault. Tuberculosis was rampant back when cows weren't being fed properly and people were getting TB from bad milk. So the industry finally owned up and said, yeah, it's the milk. And so what do you think they did? Well, they probably admitted their fault and they sent the cows back on pasture. Never in a million years. Industry would never do that. The industry decided to pasteurize the milk. So they took really bad milk that made people sick and had a lot of bad microorganisms, and they heated it. And it killed most of the bugs, but there's still about, I think the USDA limit for pasteurization is 160,000 bacteria per cc per milliliter, which to me is kind of shocking because it's a lot of bad bacteria. It's still disease-causing bacteria. It's just not enough to make the average human sick right away. It takes maybe a long time to make you sick from this stuff. The other thing that happened was they started storing the milk in grocery stores, and the wives were complaining. Back then, the wives were in the kitchen and were preparing food, and they were complaining that the cream was hardening. And so the industry, instead of saying, well, we need to get it to you sooner so it's fresh, they said, I know what we'll do. We'll just homogenize it. And this process of pressurizing the milk through really tiny holes made it so that the fat didn't congeal, so it wasn't as saturated or longer chains. And then the fat was turned into bad, and that became inflammatory. And so now everybody's lactose intolerant, and they can't drink milk, and they think it's the milk because that's what the industry says. Because they say, well, we'll make you soy milk, or we'll make you coconut milk. It's your problem. You have the lactose intolerance. It couldn't be our milk. McDonald's in the 1950s, when they started, used tallow to make their French fries, and people loved it. And it was grass-fed. McDonald's French fries were actually pretty healthy when they first started. But then somebody got a heart attack, some guy, and he sued McDonald's, and they changed the vegetable oils in the 1990s, and that made us really sick, the vegetable oils. So they're very inflammatory. So I want to go through a few websites and give you some information about all this, and we'll get to, what do these bad fats do and how do they do it? The inflammation, gallbladder disease, heart disease, cancer, and what the industry has told us to do, and why that's just another step for them to make more money. Okay, so let me shift here, and I'll go to this one. Okay, so this is just what is a fat, and the red stuff is oxygen, and these little white ones are hydrogen, and the dark ones are carbon. So fats are carbon and hydrogen, and they have a glycerol. That's what this molecule up here is, just to attach these chains. And if you have 3 chains, that's a triglyceride. That's what most of the fats are. In food science, the terms fat and lipids are used interchangeably, but basically fats and oils are 2 types of liquids. Fats are the lipids that are solid at room temperature, okay, and oil. So fats are solid at room temperature, and oils are not. Which is one way you can tell if you have a good olive oil, if it's got a lot of monounsaturated fats and not too many polyunsaturated fats, if they're not adding the olive oil mafia is not adding soybean oil to your olive oil at the grocery store. Then you put it in the refrigerator, it should harden up. And if it doesn't harden in the refrigerator, then it's adulterated. Okay, so that's a basic chemical structure of fats. Proteins have nitrogen in there, in here, and carbohydrates have oxygen, hydrogen, throughout the molecule, basically. Omega-6 fatty acids, if you start with the glycerol and you get to the 6th position, and that's, or down here, 6th position, and that's the last unsaturated double chain. And omega-3s, the last unsaturated carbon to carbon, is the 3rd position, almost near the end. And omega-3 fatty acids don't give us inflammation, and omega-6 fatty acids in general do. So we want to keep the amount of omega-6 fatty acids low, and just adding an omega-3 fish oil capsule doesn't lower your omega-6 intake. It just gives you more omega-3, and people thought, well, if we just balance it out, that's what the industry did, we'll make some omega-3 pills. But it's turning out not to be the answer. We got to cut back. We're eating at least 20 times the omega-6 fatty acids today that people used to 100 years ago, and it's causing inflammation and problems. Let's see why that one didn't come up. Oh, here we are. Okay, so saturated fat C has none of these double bonds between the carbon. It's saturated with hydrogens, and then unsaturated fats will have this. So if it has just one of these in the molecule, it'll be called a monounsaturated fat, which is olive oil has a lot of that. This was an article on the French fries and McDonald's, and you can go back and see this history. This is not something I made up. It was pretty easy to find it on the web, and there are a lot of people that griped about it because the taste changed too. These seed oils, they go rancid. Polyunsaturated fats go rancid very quickly once they're exposed to air, and they smell terrible, and nobody would eat them except that the industry deodorizes them to make them, make them palatable. And they taste okay for a short time, but then they make you feel terrible. I mentioned the untold story of milk from Ronald Schmidt, and how that industry led to the destruction of the fats. This is a picture of a cotton mill, one of the original ones, and Crisco, which started by Procter Gamble. Procter Gamble was a soap making company, and they thought, well, if we hydrogenate the Crisco, which had a lot of unsaturated fats, and we turn it into saturated. The problem with that is it makes that unhealthy saturated fat. It makes it trans fat instead of a CIS fat, and that causes a lot of problems like heart disease. Margarine was a real culprit for that. But Crisco, cottonseed oil, CO, Crisco was advertised heavily, and so people started using it. But Procter & Gamble they were just looking to make a soap, but it just didn't turn out well. They just couldn't make it into a soap, and they were tired of using expensive tallow. They wanted to use inexpensive cottonseed oil, but then one of their chemists figured out how to turn it into something that could substitute for butter, and they sold people on it with advertising. The surprisingly interesting history of margarine. Napoleon. I don't know if you know this, but Napoleon was the first guy that said, no more of this volunteer army, drafting people, 2 years in the army, only men from certain ages. Napoleon said, everybody's going to fight. The entire country. I don't care if you're, who you are. You're going to fight. And, back then it was all about numbers. If you had 300,000 person army and, the other guys had a 200,000 person army and, each side lost 200,000, then you won because you had 100,000 left. So it was all about numbers. We'll just shoot each other, and whoever has the biggest numbers, because they were just using guns back then. They didn't have some cannons, but they didn't have the bombs that we have now and airplanes. But that's how they won the wars. It was numbers. So Napoleon, because nobody was working and they were all going to war, he said, listen, we need something to feed these people. It's too difficult to feed them butter. And he gave a prize to a person who could come up with a butter substitute. And they did. And they called it margarine. And eventually margarine was made out of seed oils. And it's a hydrogenated chemistry product. It's only yellow because they add yellow food coloring. And it's really, really bad for us. Anyway, that's the story of margarine. There are numerous articles. There are lots of books. The best book, I think, is Nourishing Fats by Sally Fallon. It's got the history, all this information in it. But you can go to websites like this, and the type of oils that cause cancer, heart disease, obesity, and diabetes are the seed oils. And this happened in the 60s and 70s. There was a new so-called health breakthrough that dictated saturated fat should be crossed off the list. And we should only use vegetable oils like Crisco, soybean oil, and all these. And we fed our kids, low-fat diet because we trusted the government. And it was hard. It was a terrible thing to do. Well, we know that now. Even the registered dietitians where I work at the Veterans Hospital say, yeah, saturated fats are good and seed oils are bad. They like canola oil, but 95% of canola oil is Roundup ready. And so try and find an organic canola oil. But still, it goes rancid. It's polyunsaturated, so it goes rancid. The advantage of canola oil, they say, is that it's higher in omega-3s and lower in omega-6. But still, it's not as good as grass-fed tallow, pastured lard, grass-fed butter. Anyway, you can find all this stuff if you look for it, or if you get Sally Fallon's book. Inflammation, obesity, a lot of it's from low-fat, high-carb diets, or from seed oils like safflower oil, sunflower oil. Look at the ingredients on the stuff you buy. You'll see it everywhere. It's how they make money, and it causes disease. So now we know fats are good for you. Saturated fat and cholesterol benefit the body. And cholesterol doesn't cause heart disease. Cholesterol is a substance, in our cell membranes that holds things together. Cholesterol is trying to heal heart disease. It doesn't cause it. It's caused by probably inflammation from the omega-6, high omega-6 diet. There's a big push now to go plant-based, and a plant-based diet initially will help if you have a lot of inflammation and you have a diet that's full of bad fats and oils. More vegetables and less fats will probably be healthier for you, but long-term, a vegetarian diet, especially a vegan diet, can cause great harm. And there's a book about it from someone named Lear Keith, who was a vegetarian for, 10, 20 years. And when she finally bit into a hamburger, with a lot of fat, she felt like she had died and gone to heaven. Because she finally was getting the fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin K, on and on. The great cholesterol myth. Lowering your cholesterol doesn't prevent heart disease. Okay, I wanted to get some life insurance when I got my job at the VA, and so they had group life insurance, and I thought, well, maybe I can get something cheaper online, and I found something cheaper, and I filled out the form, and this young kid called me, and I said, what's the cost of the life insurance? And he said, well, it depends. Just answer a couple questions. I figured, okay, age and stuff, he might be more expensive. And he gets to cholesterol, and he says, what's your cholesterol? And I said, I don't know, but I think it's probably 180, but it could be 220. I don't know. And he goes, oh, as long as it's under 300, you're fine. I went, whoa, wait a second. I said, doctors are pushing statins on everybody, even if their cholesterol is like 240 or something. They're giving them statins. And I said, what do you mean under 300? 299 is not going to increase my chance of dying? And he said, oh, no. And I said, whoa, we got to talk about this before I buy the life insurance. We talked for an hour. It turned out he had a degree in nutrition from college. And he knew the statistics from selling life insurance for quite a while. And he was well versed in it all. And he understood that it's all about selling the statins, that it is not the cholesterol, it's the diet, it's the inflammatory diet. So your cholesterol in your bloodstream might just be, if it's elevated, might be a sign of inflammation, your body trying to heal it. But he told me that if my cholesterol was under 300, I did not have an increased chance of dying. So statins are being really pushed by the industry, and they cause a lot of harm, musculoskeletal problems, on and on. And they're not necessary for a lot of people that are taking them. If people would just change their diets and have a less inflammatory diet, they would see a big difference. Here's some more truth. Campaign for real milk. This is the website realmilk.com, where you can find real milk. I know I'm missing something here. Oh yeah. And there are ways to a lot of other ways to eat healthy fats. When you start eating healthy fats, your gallbladder will start to make more bile and excrete more bile, because when you eat fat, that's when your gallbladder squeezes out the bile, because the bile salts dissolve the fat so you can digest it. So people get gallbladder disease and they're told, oh, you need a cholecystectomy. It's like, what? That's how we are able to eat the fats and digest the fats. Why would you take the gallbladder out? Well, maybe because it makes them money. So gallbladder disease is from a diet that's poor in fat. So the answer to gallbladder problems is to eat more fat. Unless it's too late and there are so many big stones in there that things are just blocked up. Okay, so if you've never made butter, back to the slides here. If you've never made butter, you should try it one time. Butter, it comes from cream, and I made it once. It's like a miracle. You whip cream and you keep whipping it and whipping it and whipping it, and just like that, it turns into butter, into yellow butter if it's good cream. And this is just a website how you can pour it into a blender. I did it with a mixer with that metal thing, the whip, and you just keep stirring up the cream, and then boom, it turns into butter. And you can wash it with cold water and ice water, and you got butter. It's not hard to make, although it's easy to buy. Grass-fed butter, 100%. Kerrygold is a good brand. Here's how to make beef tallow. It comes from the suet. from around the organs. Organ fat, like around the kidney, around the heart, that kind of thing is, the best beef fat. I think it's called, in pigs, I think it's called LEAF fat. It's like 2.5 times more expensive. But it's the best fat. And you can just stick it in the oven. You find some suet, nobody wants the fat, great, I'll take it. If it's from grass-fed, and you throw it in the oven, and an hour and a half, you got all this great fat to eat. Remember Sally Fallon in her video with AllisonMorrow.locals.com said that there were 1,000 units of vitamin D in her lard. This is Healthy Home Economist. Pastured pig fat is where it's at. It's easy to get. It's got to be pastured, and there's a lot of bad pig fat out there. Rendering lard is easy, but I can buy lard from my farmer. He's usually got it all the time. But you have to be careful, not conventional pigs, because of the Roundup in the soy and the GMO corn that they're eating. And it's high in omega-6. Very inflammatory, that fat. She goes through unprocessed leaf lard. Local pork is better, of course. It's what they feed the pigs. Anyways, that's a great website if you ever have a chance to get to it. Healthy Home Economist. She has a lot of information. Couple other benefits. If you eat healthy fats, you will lose weight. Mary Ainig, God rest her soul, I think was the world's expert, still is the books that I'm available to me. World's expert on fats, and when you eat fat, you lose weight. I was like, how could that be? Because fat has 9 grams of, or 9 kilocalorie per gram, and carbohydrates and protein only have 4 kilocalories per gram. So fat has more than twice, the amount of energy or whatever in it. Eating the same amount of fat is got to make you fatter. And that's true if you eat the same weight of fat. But when you eat protein and carbohydrates, you usually will eat till your stomach feels full. But when you eat fats, your body makes leptins, Leptins, leptins. And so it's a hormone that makes you feel like you're full, even though your stomach's not full. So people on a so-called ketogenic diet, high fat, low carbohydrate diet, one of the big problems they have is maintaining their weight. A lot of them will supplement with olive oil. 2 people I know supplement with olive oil so that they'll gain some of the weight back because they're just not hungry ever. When you eat a lot of fat, you won't be hungry. Probably last point is, these fat-soluble vitamins, especially vitamin D and vitamin K. Vitamin K2 so necessary so that you can have a high intake of vitamin D. Otherwise, you get vitamin D toxicity if you're taking pills and calcification of the arteries. So you can get vitamin K2 as a pill, but you get the vitamin K2 in healthy fats too. You don't have to, you don't have to take pills if you get enough fat in your diet. And probably lastly, I do supplement with cod liver oil from greenpasture.org, and that's a very healthy fat. If it's made properly, cod liver oil, if it's not heavily processed. This is just fermented in a barrel. There's no heating involved at greenpasture.org, like there is over in Norway and Iceland with their cod liver oil factories. And I do supplement with that just to make sure I get enough vitamin D, 2 teaspoons a day in the winter and 1 teaspoon a day in the summer. And with that, I don't take any vitamin D pills, and I'm not worried about getting a cytokine storm from COVID and dying from COVID because I eat healthy fats, and I have adequate vitamin D levels. Sun is not the cause of skin cancer. Vitamin D deficiency is. I had my first skin cancer when I was I had my only skin cancer when I was around 33, and they told me to wear a big hat and use sunscreen. Then I found out the sunscreen was taken off the market because it caused cancer. And then I had other health problems, and found out that nutrition was the problem. And now I get Florida sunshine in the summer, 2 hours every Sunday. I mean, intense sun. I don't wear sunscreen, and I don't get skin cancer anymore because I eat healthy fats and I get enough vitamin D. So I hope I've convinced you that fats are healthy for you. I hope you'll do your own research. Maybe start with real milk or real butter, grass-fed butter, pastured lard, pastured tallow. I hope you'll start putting a lot of fat into your food. Anytime you make any type of meat or fish, it's a great time to add a lot of fat, and you'll eat less meat, so it'll be less expensive for you. You'll be healthier. You'll have more energy, and you'll be ketotic. Your brain will be fed by ketones and not by glucose. So you'll be more alert. Your brain will work better for you, and you'll lose weight. You won't get cancer, which is because vitamin D is so important for our immune system function. You won't get heart disease if you eat good fats because they won't be inflammatory for you, and you won't be supporting the industry anymore, who large industries are destroying our country and destroying our health. And it's time we got back to the small farm and supporting small businesses in our local community. Okay, so thanks a lot for listening. It was my first try to go through websites like that one at a time. I was inspired by Ryan Christian to try it once, but little by little, I'll get you more information so you can be healthier and have a stress-free, healthy life where you don't need a doctor and you don't need a dentist anymore, and you don't have to go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist anymore. That's my goal. The stuff I want to share with you to get you to that point in your life. Over the next couple years, little by little, I'll get you there. And in the meantime, I hope to make some interesting and fun videos. See you next time.